we've got two people zoomed in here or not? What do we have?
Mary?
We have Mary there. Okay, good. Okay. Welcome to the September 16th, 2024 meeting of the Yarmouth Board of Health. First thing, we'll start with some attendance. Mary, are you present?
Present.
Great. Eric?
Present.
Hillard is. Larry?
Present.
And Charlie is not. So we have a quorum. That's fine. Just keep in mind, as usual, this is a hybrid meeting, so people can certainly be here in the audience or be zooming in to watch and participate. Okay, the first item is public comment, and if anyone here would like to come forward with some comment or even questions, whatever, or anyone at home or wherever they're zooming in from. No takers? No takers. Okay, number two, let's go. There's a green burial request. This is at 114 Mayflower Terrace in South Yarmouth. And underneath, we have a name of Ross K. McCurdy. So, Jay or Barry, do you have anything to say?
But let's,
Mr.
reference to this?
Mr. McCurdy's here. He came and had, you want to come on up and? Very interesting subject. I've never heard of the green burial till I started doing some research for Mr. McCurdy. Massachusetts is one of 3 states that allows it. There's a lot of parameters that needed to be checked beforehand. One was make sure it's outside the tidal zone, not in a zone 2, outside the 500-year flood line. I had to have a soil test done to make sure it was clear from groundwater. It has to be at least 3 feet from groundwater and 3 feet deep. So Mr. McCurdy did all the research and we did all the percolation tests. He can tell you a little bit more about what he would like, I would suggest. You had a question about the map, the blue map. The outline of the property didn't come out as well as I wanted it to, but the dot is where we did the did the soil test. So that's outside of the water buffer, it's outside of the zone 2, it's outside the wetlands.
Okay, I have some specific questions about that, but let's turn this over to you and can let us know what you're interested in and perhaps educate us as well, because I've been on the board a while and I haven't seen a case for this, before.
Yes, I'm Ross K. McCurdy, and I'm here on behalf of my father, Ross Walter McCurdy, who lives at 114 Mayflower Terrace. And his wishes, he wants to be buried on his property. And I'm going through the process and seeking your approval for him to be buried on the property. Some background on my father, he's going to be 85 next month. The last 2 years have been hard on him. We probably should have gotten this started years ago. But, there's still time to do all this stuff. He was a science teacher, environmentally minded his whole career, interested in archaeology, genealogy. He's written books on that. And I'm just trying to help him honor his wishes. He also wishes to keep his home in the family for generations and generations. And I think this is aligned with that.
Okay. Thank you. So, well, I can just start. You brought up the map. I just had a couple questions about it.
Yeah.
And I guess it's not visible for me any distances here, which I assume, in the packet that I don't know if there are any town regs or state regs. They weren't in my packet. I don't know if anyone else got it. So I didn't do a whole lot of homework. There were a couple articles.
Background.
Yeah,
The
but
green
Barry,
burials.
I had a problem with that, only in that I don't know where this came from. In other words, where's the source of the information? Is it timely or where it came out of? It was good reading, and I learned a lot from it. However, I don't know the source.
I pulled this off of the state website,
Okay,
Massachusetts state website.
okay. And then there's one about where and how to get a green burial in Massachusetts.
That was just off the internet.
Okay, because It's just nice to know who wrote it. There's a picture of this person, I don't know who it is or where it was published. So in the future, I think that would be helpful for the
Okay.
board, just the source of the information.
Okay, yes, sir.
Make sure it's on target. They're both easy to read and certainly to understand. The other thing on the map is, today in preparation, I went online also and started to look into this. And that would be distance, I guess, from not only the wetlands, but for other green burials or cemeteries. You know, how close? In other words, is there a density issue for this, dealing with soil, for instance? Is there anything related to how far the site here, or the dot is, to other potential contributors to the soil? I mean, I think that's really what a lot of this is about. I don't know, are property lines an issue or not? In other words, how close is this particular site from neighbors? I'm trying to learn about this also, and obviously need to look out for the town. The fact you're here is great, I think, for what you're requesting. So I don't know if we have that information or not. From this, I don't see it.
I would have to do a little more research to get distances. I didn't find any. I just know like the setbacks, some of the parameters. You're not allowed in a zone 2 to do it. You're not allowed. You have to be within outside the 500-year flood zone, that's why I highlighted the flood zone on here. So where the property would be out of it. The property is on a hill and it's up higher.
Okay.
We were good 16 feet from groundwater, 16 plus feet from groundwater. So groundwater is not an issue where it's at. It also has to, if it gets approved, when he does it, there has to be an as-built, kind of like with your septic, show where like everything is at, and then where the actual plot is on the property. That has to be recorded with the deeds and stuff like that too. So,
Are there any issues of local wells that for private water that are relevant to this?
he
I'm
did.
just throwing a whole lot of questions. I mean,
Public water, to the best of my knowledge, is on all the houses in the area.
what I'm actually referring to, there's some people who have their own wells for their water. That's all I'm kind of asking, if we know anything about distance, if that's relevant here or not.
I could look that up. When who was our
Bob Perry,
Perry?
Cape Cod Engineering.
Cape Cod Engineering. I think when he did his research, he didn't mention any wells to it. So, but I can look into it if we need to.
You know,
I think there is an issue in that area though.
you know who that person is, or?
Bob Perry?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't.
he's an engineer. I've worked with him for many years.
Good, okay.
And I think he might be he's on a couple boards in Dennis for septic and stuff like that. So
Okay.
very reputable gentleman. Yes.
I believe the requirements, distance between a well and a septic system would be around 100 feet. And since everybody has septic systems around there, I can't see this being a factor as significant as a septic system.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if you have a map that was generated by Bob Perry of Cape Cod Engineering. I brought some, if you would like these. Here you go, Mr. Chair.
Okay. It's Hillard, okay? Hillard Bosch, yeah.
Thank you. You guys-
I don't have it.
Frank, I hear you're a teacher also. Yes. What grade?
9th and 10th.
That sounds nice. I'm thinking 11, 12.
Very nice.
So you can see the elevations up where the test hole was done. It's way up there, like 86, and it goes all the way down to 169. So it's definitely high elevation right there.
So is the location of the grave site where boring number 1 is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Would there be any issue in the town with neighbors?
You,
Is there
did you get,
any concern with neighbors?
I am not anticipating any concern with neighbors. Yeah, I view this as kind of a personal thing, and I don't think he'll be making too much noise or keeping anybody up.
Well, I understand that, but when the people, obviously your neighbors moved in, they didn't anticipate a green burial next door.
True.
So they may, I'm just trying to be sensitive to their requirements too. Not sure how that would make, if we're beyond the scope of our purview on that or what.
We need to figure out, apparently this is up to us. I mean, you make a good point. I just personally am gonna see what I can do to make this happen. I think it's great, again, that what you're here for. It's unique in that we're talking about someone who's still alive, and so we're going to work on that tonight right now as we're talking. Yeah, you make the point of someone who could see this as a cemetery, and they didn't think they were going to be living next to a cemetery. That's not how you're looking at this. I understand that. We're just trying to, as the board for the whole town, we need to think about what other people think, and neighbors would be relevant, and we really don't want something to happen after the point.
What about a grave marker? How would that be?
I anticipate something simple and flat, so unobtrusive and not noticeable
Sure.
to anybody walking by or any of the neighbors. Just, something that shows where the location is and where family members can pay their respects.
What is the plan, for instance, for, I hate to do this, after your father passes, what happens with him prior to the burial? In other words, are there regulations about that? How's all this process? In other words, it'll probably be the health department needs to be looking over what takes place. In other words, does a casket meet the requirements?
Well, it's specified in that.
yeah, no caskets, no boxes, has to be like in a woven.
Where's that?
Preservatives.
The reading I came across that you can, depending upon what something is made out of, maybe I misunderstood it, that the requirements of the materials you would use may be fine.
I've seen the same thing you saw, that pine, softwood such as pine are fine to make a casket of because that readily decomposes.
Yeah,
So that's aligned with a green burial.
right.
And I think that would be sensible and tasteful in this. And I've also been working with Chapman Funeral Home.
Okay.
So they'll be handling, some of the arrangements for this. And then I'll, do whatever needs to be done on my end.
Yeah, no, I apologize for raking you over all this. Yeah, I mean, we've all been probably to enough funerals. The caskets are made out of different materials. Some are probably toxic. I imagine what they're made out of, whether it's metal that's there. That's one of the concerns we have is about soil and chemicals a little bit. So the question was, who's going to be keeping track of that, of the process? And Larry, you made the issue, you brought up the point of a marker. In other words, who okays that, or so this is new for us, which I'm just trying to lead a discussion here, figuring out how we can make this happen for you.
Yeah, and as Barry mentioned, a shroud is one possibility. Something pine is another possibility, and something simple. Like my father, I'm very environmentally minded. I actually teach an alternative energy class. And so I think this is very aligned with that, something where, things break down, decompose, and end up in the soil rather than, in a concrete cement liner pumped with poisonous chemicals for 1,000 years.
Right. And what about the issue of cremation in all this?
My father, being big in genealogy and history and all that stuff, does not want to be cremated at all. I think if someone did want to be cremated, it would probably be something simpler than what we're doing now. Probably just scattering some ashes and being done with it, or burying a tiny urn. So, yeah, my father specifically does not want to be cremated.
Okay, it sounds like that simplifies it, believe it or not. Some of the things I read, maybe we've gone over some of the same things. The issue with the urn was really what metal they're made out of, and is that environmental issue there, as opposed to just sprinkling ashes?
Yeah, this has been an interesting journey as we've researched this, and you find out burials at sea are, legal. You just have to meet the requirements. Other things is, I've researched different ways that people are buried.
I know the body, from my research, it can't be embalmed, so no chemicals in the body and stuff like that, that won't go into leach into the water, into the ground, so.
Larry, what happens with animals? In other words, I don't know if you know anything about this at all. In other words, if the backyard is filled with animals that are,
Typically, you dig a backhoe, comes in for a horse, digs a hole 6,
That's what-
8 feet deep,
right,
and there's no muss, no fuss, and that's
Right.
the end of it. But I'm not even sure any permits are pulled on those, or if
Okay.
there's ever been an issue with a permit that I'm aware of, at least in the town of Barnstable, where I've been familiar with putting horses in the ground.
right.
Over the years, the number of horses that I've seen buried is basically just a backhoe comes in and digs a hole, and of course, the only concern, and I was gonna ask the gentleman here, is going forward, the sale of the property, obviously it could be an issue going forward if the family decided to sell the property, and I don't know how that would work.
It's going to be in a trust-like situation, probably an LLC to, keep it in the family for, generations and generations as long as possible.
Yeah, so at the point, if it ever did get sold, it would be a moot point anyway, as far as decomposition goes.
It does have to go on the deed. Excuse me, it does have to be on the deed.
It just has to
Yes,
be
yes.
recorded at the registry of deeds.
Right.
The other part, if I could just ask, you talked about this being generational. Would you envision eventually a family cemetery? Could this expand?
I'm not seeing a whole lot of expansion at this time. I mean, way down the road, possibly one other, but I don't think it's going to become like anything big. My father's wishes are generally somewhat unique, I think.
Okay, all right.
So I'm not envisioning like a family crypt somewhere.
So, an area, I didn't know if that, because you talked generationally, this is going to be in the family, and it has been already, and congratulations to your dad on all this. But the fact, Mr. Chairman, that there's only 3 states in the whole country that have this is not a well-researched, or it's not common. A lot is being put on the board here, and they're asking appropriate questions. You mentioned neighbors, you mentioned a number of markers, and this isn't a well-researched and a well-vetted area. It just isn't. We'll lean on the funeral director quite a bit on that, should the board, and maybe there's some more research that has to be done here. But there isn't a lot to go on that. We've never had this. You mentioned cremation. Really, all you need on cremation is approval from the property owner, right? If someone wants to, even on a town beach, if someone said that, they would need just permission from the town to spread ashes without a container, things like that. So cremation is a whole different category, and certainly much simpler and much easier with permission, written permission from the property owner. This is something different. We have to, worried about elevation and erosion and things of that nature, but it is some of this is spelled out, but it's not well researched. There's not a lengthy history, longitudinal work on this. There just isn't.
Jay, has the department looked at records to see if we have any record of doing this prior?
There's
No
nothing.
history,
No history of this.
no
None.
paperwork?
This is the first time this has come across my desk.
I've brought this up with 6 other directors that I know, and they've never this is the first for everybody. So it's a very unique thing what your father wants to do. So that's
We do get calls on cremation. This is different.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment and a question. You know, I think that we should be aware that this may be something we will be facing more in the future. You mentioned cremation, but that is a very polluting process. So, you know, most people that are environmentally concerned, as this gentleman's father is, you know, would not even think about cremation for at least environmental reasons. Secondly, I'm wondering if the funeral home, the funeral director with whom the family's working, have they had any experience with this? What is their knowledge about this?
I am pretty sure they have not done this locally. Although, interesting, at Chapman Funeral Home, the woman I was working with was from Jamaica, and she's basically said that this is very common in Jamaica, where the family handles many of these things, and if they have a little bit of land, they'll just bury the person there. And so my request and how I wanted this to be handled, my father wants it to be handled, she seemed very comfortable with that, which was nice.
So, as an aside, in my 46 years of practice in veterinary medicine, this is routinely done with horses, cows, you know, any domestic animals that I'm aware of, and I've never heard of an issue as a result of it. Although I don't know if, people just, I don't know if they do it discreetly or what, but it's very common for people to bury their dog out back or something like that. And, so it's a pretty common occurrence with animals. It's just, as with the rest of the group, it's unfamiliar territory for me, but from a biological standpoint, would be no different. The decomposition would occur same as, I mean, it would be much quicker than, say, a horse, a 1,000-pound horse. And usually there's no evidence of that horse except for bones, maybe 5 years later.
Of what?
Bones.
Which would be why you'd want a marker there so that in the future, you know, people weren't concerned about finding them if they were exposed.
Are there any issues in the soil? I'm looking to my left. You're gonna have the answer of infectious diseases. In other words, what was the cause of death? Is that relevant to putting that in the ground, in an infection? In other words, if there's some
There's
organism
saprophytic organisms that wouldn't be a danger any more than they are now. I don't think that would be an issue.
I think there's enough biological processes that take place
Exactly.
underground to alleviate any concern with that, just as it would with a septic system,
Even more so, probably.
even more so.
Yeah.
This is just for the record.
I
Yeah,
think it's
okay.
a great request, and does it seem prudent that we develop some type of standard procedure should we receive a request like this again in the future to at least help with our record keeping in the department?
Per the Massachusetts, where we got the law, or the guidance, every one of them has to come in front of the board for permission. So whether it's nothing I can, or Jay can do over the counter, they all have to come in front of the board if we get another request.
Sure, but I mean, I guess what I'm thinking is, I don't know, a form or something to
Right.
have on file in the department, casket type, things like that. You know,
Procedures,
just
protocols.
some
Exactly.
yeah, not to impede the process, but to help the board,
Facilitate.
to help facilitate the process.
Right? It'll make us look more intelligent,
the-
that's for sure.
Yeah.
The other,
This could also really simplify things for people who might want to do this, is this already precedent. Here's what you can do. You can do a shroud, you can do a pine casket.
Right.
Horizontal marker, and so just streamline it, whereas when I started this process, I didn't quite know where to start. And Barry, thank you very much for your help in guiding me and doing some research with this. And I thank all of you for having me here tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I do think if you're talking, if the board were to go in the direction of writing protocols, I do think it should be referred over to the Conservation Commission as well because of environmental issues. I think it should be on their agenda and in front of the Conservation Commission to weigh in on this. Because you may, as I don't forget, this gentleman or others have said, or maybe Larry yourself, might we see more of these coming in? There probably should be, but I think the Conservation Commission would also want to weigh in, or should have. They may have procedures and setbacks that are different than the state regulations.
Well, but that would be a local thing then.
It would be, as we start to set the parameters. But certainly environmental, this is, all the questions that have been asked here, aside from the neighbors, have been environmental issues. And that's certainly their purview, and that's their space that they work in, the conservation group.
What do you think about the neighbors? I mean, do you think they should be involved at all in it or
I
not?
think if nothing else, whether they weigh in or not, but they should be notified.
Yeah, I think they should be notified, but I agree with Mr. Perry that it's I'm sorry, not Mr. Perry, McCarty, that it's a private matter, but.
Right. Right.
But I do think there should be notification and maybe opportunity to just respond.
Okay, they might have some insight that we're unaware of. What about the markers? Should we have any kind of a regulation regarding markers, or?
Barry, what did you see in your research?
It just has to be noted on a as-built, basically. It doesn't have to be marked. It just has somewhere in the documentation of as-built of where the location of the burial is.
So it could be a tree. It could be a planting, a shrub. It could be something of that
It doesn't
nature.
have to be anything, just it has to be like, as we do an as-built for a septic.
Right.
I mean, D-box, tank,
On the plot plan? in
McCurdy,
other words?
yeah, on a plot plan.
On the deed, you
Somewhere, yes, like on a plot plan, it just has to be on there somewhere.
I mean, the bigger concern, I mean, you bring up is someone may feel they want to have a 12-foot marker or something, or, light on at night or something. So there needs, if we're going to go the route you're saying, which I think is a good one, you need to be able to tell people what they can do. In other words, is there a height limit? Is it 14 inches or whatever it would be?
I have a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
My thought would be, in terms of notifying the neighbors when all of this is settled, and hopefully positively for the gentleman who would like to be buried in this manner, that perhaps the funeral home could compose the letter to the neighbors, assuring them that they have met all of the Massachusetts regulations, that it's come before the Board of Health, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that way, if there were any concerns, people would know that this was just not something that was being done without any oversight and without any acknowledgement of any kinds of concerns or ramifications of the burial. I would ask that of the funeral director.
We're gonna make that a requirement, or, it sounds like should be maybe voluntary? I mean,
Right,
yeah,
right. I'm just suggesting that that's what I would do.
Okay.
To make sure that you from the get-go, you're notifying the neighbors, but you're letting them know that there are state regulations, they have been met. That included going before the town Board of Health, et cetera.
maybe I could draft a letter like that myself, including all those
Sure.
things that you mentioned, Mary. I think that's
Yep.
a really good idea.
Yeah, I hate to see things getting delayed for you until we put this together, which I think is a great idea. The example you gave up about the marker, is that in the state regs that says anything about markers, or?
No.
There's
I
not?
didn't see anything in my reresearch about it, so.
Someone could put a
Traditional-
mausoleum up. I mean, it just, what,
Yeah, green burial, I think, is a key term here, where traditional green burial will have a horizontal marker or no marker at all, something as Barry mentioned. So yeah, having something upright, like it's gonna look like a Halloween prop in October, I don't think that really meets the criteria for the green burial.
The
I don't,
people that are wanting the green burials are wanting to not disrupt and as much as possible, I think.
exactly, to just kind of keep it simple and back to nature, the way things were intended to be. So yeah, it's not a law that I know of, just green burial will have the horizontal or nothing.
Yeah, the
That would
issue-
be another assurance to your neighbors, what you personally intend to do.
Yeah, because your interpretation can be different than somebody else's, a neighbor, of what they think. That's all. That's what the board has to look out for. So it's not questioning what your intentions are, it really isn't. It's a question of the next person. Or the neighbor may interpret things very, very differently. So you need to be protected in what you're doing. I mean, and you need, you need the Board of Health to move along with you on this. So,
Just another comment. My neighbor recently put in a request to build a fence. Abutters are notified. They have an opportunity to appear before I think it was the Old Kings Highway Historical Committee. Neighbor made a presentation, photos, documentation. Neighbors have an opportunity to speak. I don't know as we want to necessarily get involved in telling people that they need to have a marker that meets certain criteria. I understand where you're coming from, but, it's a sensitive area, right? And so, I don't know, I'm just maybe foreseeing the opportunity for neighbors to weigh in. I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking through the other processes that we have here in town in terms of building on our properties.
I don't think that we should have the whole abutter thing on this. I think it takes away from the personal aspects. As long as there are regulations and they have been adhered to, they come before the Board of Health, as this gentleman has, and in the future, hopefully, there's a checklist so that it will make it much easier for us to go down and make sure that we are comfortable with what's happening and that all the requirements have been met. I don't think the abutters need to be notified other than by letter from the family.
So Mary, are you just suggesting that we determine parameters in the regulation?
Right, but not in terms of the marker or anything. That's, it could be no marker,
Sure.
or it could the horizontal one, and the people requesting permission for that type of burial can decide that. And that's what they communicate to the neighbors. But basically, it would be that because this is a green burial, and I'm guessing not many people know about green burials and understand, but that could be part of their education, that because it's a green burial, the marker will be simply flat, horizontal, simply so that the family, will know in the future, and that it has been added to the plot. Just things that will reassure people so that it will take away some of the kind of strangeness that they might feel, or, fear, anxiety, because it's new.
I'm not sure if I agree or not. I'm trying to figure that out, Mary. In other words, I mean, if we have regulations, if we have certain standards, then I would agree with you that you can inform the neighbors, but if they're following what our regulations are or what the Board of Health has stated, for instance, the height of a marker,
And the setbacks.
right, if it's on paper, in this case, it may be helpful that we're going to just review it because the regulations, it's not going to be written in time, maybe to help you in this case, then we can still get around that.
Thank you.
But what are some of the key things that should be in reg, so the neighbors, this is just how life is here. Excuse the pun, but it's, then it won't make any difference if the for instance, this gentleman would just follow what the town is requiring, then there's really no issue at all.
Well, I have no problem with that, Hillard, but we don't have those rules. But you're basically saying we should have a policy with regulations about, and set our own parameters in addition to the state ones, correct?
Maybe it's all in the states. Once again, I didn't see the state regs through all the details. Maybe it's all there, and we had nothing to really do other than give a guideline out or a copy of the regs, the state regs, to a person who wants to come in front of the board. Maybe the work is all done. I don't know. If it's 10 steps that people need to take, then they'll know what to take. That's all. And this will be a pretty simple matter when it's sitting on the agenda the next time for the board.
I just want to clarify, I'm not suggesting that the neighbors really get involved in the process. I'm merely suggesting that, we have something in place in the health department to streamline the process so that people can come in and have on record what their intentions are, and when they come before the board, we can clearly process the request, just as the department can. And, I mean, like it or not, these are public meetings, okay? So I understand, Mary's concern, and I actually agree. I'm not suggesting that we necessarily put parameters for a marker on an application, but an individual can appear before the board and notify us of their intent. And again, like it or not, the process in the town is that it's a public meeting. So, I think that we maybe don't need to necessarily worry about the prospect of somebody erecting a 12-foot tall mausoleum in their backyard, because the natural checks and balances that we have in our processes, I think, would address that. Does that make sense?
Well,
So we
what
kind of,
would stop someone from putting a 12-foot marker up? In other words, how would you feel? You don't have to answer it. In other words, or how would I feel if my neighbor's putting up a 12-foot marker with lights on at night?
wouldn't that be our jurisdiction when they come to us for a permit?
Are we saying 8 feet or?
Something we would decide on?
That's something which I think you brought up, is we'll have some guidelines to say, well, I don't want to start judging 4 feet versus 2 feet.
Sure.
Here's what we do. Here's the 2-foot cutoff of height or something.
Well,
We're not even, my understanding was it was something that was gonna be horizontal on the ground.
Flush.
Say, for
Flush
example, you could
ground.
mow over or whatever you wanted to do,
Right.
just to
Right.
mark the gravesite.
right, but who's to say that, somebody might want something 6 inches off the ground, or 12 inches off the ground, or 2 feet off the ground?
Start to get into a cemetery, which might be a little bit another issue.
Right. So I guess I was merely suggesting that, if there is a notice sent to neighbors, like we have for a lot of our processes in town, you are being notified that your neighbor at X address is intending to conduct a green burial. They have a presentation in front of the Yarmouth Board of Health at such and such date, and that's your opportunity to
I agree, and then,
if you have concerns about it, there's your opportunity to come in and appear
the
before.
letter would
the
also
board.
say what the regs are, or a copy of it, or whatever, so they know what to expect. And that's up to us.
Not to, not to create fear, but to say that the regulations have been followed. It's being handled by an authorized and licensed funeral director in accordance with state regulations. And as Eric says very well, but they do get to come forward, and it's not a referendum of voting, but just to simply say, geez, here are my concerns, and maybe it's just an educational process, but at least they know. They don't just see, and I hate to say this, I hope this, digging in the backyard, because people question all the time. We get calls all the time when people call, are they working on the septic system by themselves? I think someone's working on that. We go out on these on a fairly regular basis. Neighbors watching neighbors, they're watching out for their own property.
Sure.
They're watching out for their biggest investment, and they look at their abutters and people across the street, things of that nature. We're a close-knit community. We do have that. I think there's value in educating and maybe alleviating fears that we're familiar with it. This isn't being done on, underhandedly or privately. This has all been gone before the Board of Health. I think there's some work that has to be done back in my office as far as the Board of Health and get the board some information. Again, I'm going to say it again. I would like the Conservation Commission to weigh in on this as well, because if they have some concerns that we're not aware of, I think that would be helpful. But I think we have some homework that we could be doing to help guide the board in this. And just in saying that, there's not a lot of regulations, and we'll do this very timely. This doesn't have to be a 6-month process. We can get this done in a timely manner that the board might have, and you'll edit it. You can, but we can craft some guidelines, some framework that the board could work on. That's a suggestion, and Eric, I think it's a good one.
Do you think you can make that happen? I'm just
think we can.
thinking of you.
This should not be a lengthy process. Barry and I can come together and we can get this.
It's just-
Yeah,
it-
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
When Ms. McCurdy came to me, again, it was new to all of us. The first department I went to was the Conservation Department. And Finn in the Conservation Department, he's the one that sent me this, the where and how to get green burials. They have no regulations on
Okay.
green burials either, so,
This is new to all of us, right?
yeah. So it's, in building, I even went to the building department and asked them, and they have, it's not in any zone, no bylaws or anything like that, so.
You think we've got enough information to act on this request tonight? And so this gentleman would have an idea where he's at?
I personally don't think so. If something urgent was come up, you can come back to us, okay? If you think we can put something together,
Yeah.
it would help me. That doesn't mean the whole board feels the way I do.
Right. I wouldn't want this to be a lengthy process. To tell you the truth, I don't know that's how much research we can even be doing. I do want to look at the state regulations and give the board some framework to be able to have a protocol and a standard for the applicant. We wouldn't take long. I'm just looking at what the next, it would be early October, whatever the first Monday in October. I'm going to say maybe the 7th or something. Is it the 7th? Yeah, okay. I'd like to think at the next meeting, we could come back with some framework.
Yeah, each area would be, it's different if someone wants to do this in Boston. It's relevant to where we live, and it'd be much more complicated. So, yeah, that would be great.
I do appreciate the timeliness with this as well. As I mentioned, the last 2 years have been pretty hard on my father. Right now, he's blind in one eye. This kind of came up gradually and then not gradually, but end result is squamous cell carcinoma, which is stage 4. He's currently getting immunotherapy treatment. He seems to be responding well, but you met him.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so within the last year and a half or so, he's gone from having like pretty good sight and now blind in one eye. So I just appreciate the timeliness factor on here. And again, I'm hoping he's going to be around for a long time, and we can share some time together. But I'll be much relieved when this gets checked off.
And it may be the board, in that framework that I'm hoping the board will craft something that they can look at, edit. And it may be notifying the Conservation Commission, notifying maybe some other departments, just as a point, and then abutters, if that's what the board were to decide. But you'll have a procedure that you quite frankly, may never use again. This may be one time that you're doing this. I've never seen this before. But you should have something in place. Is it issuing a permit? Is it something?
If the word gets out, it'll be more popular than you think it is.
Save some money, that's for sure,
I mean,
for
just
people
generally
as well.
speaking, I think it might be more popular if people even knew it was possible.
Well, Larry, all the more reason then to have a procedure in place, right? And because otherwise you just randomly, there's no standardization to it whatsoever.
I mean, this is an ideal situation just for the home. They've been there, they want to keep the home. Yeah,
Agree.
I would think I agree with you, more families would probably like to do this.
Even to simply say, you're only allowed one burial, not a family plot, but only a single plot on each lot. It has to be something, there has to be some parameters that the board is going to have to be able to be comfortable with, right? And there may be variances built into this, right? There may be some certain situations might have your mom, there may be other things to say, and you can apply for other things, other variances that come up. That has to be built in, so you have some framework. Otherwise, we're just kind of, we're kind of shooting in the dark here.
Good point. It could be 4 generations of people who are going to own the home in your family.
Of course, each one would have to go before the board and make a request. So that's where the power lies with the board to acknowledge the request or say, hey, you got a few too many people on that front yard.
And quite frankly, the board may say the limitation is one per lot, or there may be something of that nature. So those are the things I think the board is going to have to come up with. And we're not going to have a lot of guidance, but the state does have some regulations. We can look at the other states, someone with a little bit more. We've never seen this before, but the board needs some framework to work off of here. If you could give us, what are we at? We're at the 16th now. If we could have 3 more weeks to come up with something, we can put something in front of the board.
Okay?
So far, so good, and I think that will hopefully be an adequate timeline and hopefully be, more than enough. And I realize that this is kind of a pioneering thing here that we're doing, since no one's gotten a request like this. It was interesting how Mary pointed out that this is something new, and it's something new, but it's also something old. 100 years ago, this is probably the way it was done. Going to a funeral home and all the things that we're doing now probably weren't done 100 years ago, at least to the extent they are now.
Right. Public health has come a long way, pathology and, infectious disease and things of that nature. But you're right. That was done probably in the pioneer days. It was done, but I think public health, the discipline of public health has grown and matured, and regulations are in place for a reason. And there's regulations here, and not to be restrictive, but to be protective, and balancing that with the family year intention. So I'm confident we can come up with something.
We all don't know what's in our backyard. I mean, so.
And
Based
let's
on what
face
I
it, the
know-
funeral industry has become big. I forget the name of the book that dealt with that, but
But based on what I know, if it's done properly, very minimal risk to public health. I don't really even think that's an issue if it's done.
Lawrence, you made a very good point, talking about people just getting a backhoe and burying a 1,000-pound horse, and nobody thinks anything of it.
I mean, it's standard.
Yeah.
You've got, of course, we're talking, acres. These farms are probably 5, 6, 10 acres. So they usually will designate a place on the farm as a burial. And a lot of times they will put a marker, a very sort of inconspicuous marker. And that's the way it is, and it's sort of a standard process.
Okay, everyone? We can move on then. All right?
Forward to talking with you more, and I guess I'll be at the next board meeting, which will be October 7th.
The board hasn't set that yet, but that's the first Monday the board meets on Monday, the 1st and the 3rd, and that would be the next meeting, the 7th,
Okay, and when does that get set?
at the end of this meeting.
Can we just?
Yeah, you want to do that now?
Or I was gonna say, could we just notify
Sure.
Mr. McCurdy, or whatever you guys want to do?
I don't care either. Eric, why don't you decide? What would you like to do?
October. It was the 7th. That sounds fine.
And Mr. McCurdy, what Jay and I come up with, I will be more than happy to get it to you in advance, so you know what we'll be looking for and stuff like that.
Thank you, and I don't know if I can be of any help in the process as you develop guidelines. Maybe just running it by somebody who's trying to do it could offer a perspective that could be helpful.
I think that would be helpful.
Let the funeral home do some homework, for you. Let them see what they come up with. Doesn't mean we have to follow what they're saying, but they may have some sources of information. A lot of the funeral homes now, there are fewer and fewer companies. They own more and more
Yes,
funeral homes.
and I see a bit of a conflict of monetary interest at some level
Yeah,
with that.
Sure.
absolutely.
Anything we could do that doesn't require that, I think would be beneficial.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
This is very interesting. Appreciate you bringing this forward, and we'll get back to you in a timely manner. Barry will reach out if we need more information before that 7th meeting.
Thank you. And it was really good being here with all of you. And yeah, there are, things to consider, especially with this being a bit pioneering in the modern days.
Please,
It is interesting, as we get, driving electric cars and, locally grown food and things like that, people are actually starting to look into different types of, like, burial situations, hydroprocess or hydrocremation, which you may have heard of. So it's an interesting time, and, look, we get to be part of it.
please communicate to your dad that in fact the board did not deny this. We just need some more information, and we wish him well. The board, best wishes to him and his health, but that this was not a denial. We're just looking for it. The board just needs more information.
I really appreciate that, and I understand the importance of getting things, checked off, all the boxes checked off here, so things are just done smoothly and, with, a mindedness for the future.
Just tell him, we hope he doesn't need this for a while, okay? Okay.
Yes, you and me both.
Okay.
I hope to spend much more time with my father, but it'll be nice to have this done. So thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Pleasure meeting you.
And I look forward to seeing you hopefully on October 7th.
Yes.
Bye.
I'll be in touch.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, number 3 here, this is nitrogen aggregation plan, proposed amendment. It looks like it's for a vote, and it's saying 446 and 473 Station Ave, South Yarmouth, and we apparently have Attorney Andrew Singer here tonight.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Andrew Singer, attorney in Dennisport, here with Jay Hall from Colbia Enterprises. We were before you several years ago when we put this nitrogen aggregation plan into effect, when the Shell station on Station Avenue, the old Shell station now, was decommissioned and the new station was built across the street. When we were before you a few years ago, we had noted that the land, the current Shell station, which is 446 Station Avenue, was being put under conservation restriction.
Which one is that now?
The old Shell station. It's now been, the tanks are gone,
And it's
next
on
to
the-
Dunkin' Donuts.
The one that's on the corner, or the one that's right next to? Okay.
But we're not, yeah, the one on the corner is separate.
Right.
We're not talking about that.
Okay.
This, Colbia owns the old Shell station, which is next to Dunkin' Donuts.
Right.
And that's the property we're talking about. So that property right now is subject to a deed restriction. There can be no hazardous use on the property, and that's fine. That's not part of why we're here tonight.
Okay.
There is another restriction, the nitrogen aggregation credit land restriction, which says you can't do anything with the parcel. So right now, you can do nothing with that parcel. It has to be stripped and left as a vacant piece of land in the commercial zone there. We knew that when we were before you several years ago, and we commented to you, we commented to the Board of Appeals, that Colbia was always trying to find some other land. They'd like to swap it out so that the old gas station site could become productive again in the commercial zone for a non-hazardous use, so it's still a win-win environmentally. And so they found a piece of land, and that's what we're before you this evening. We have had several conversations with Jay, and Town Council has weighed in on it, because at the risk of, you have a wild agenda tonight, this is another unique situation which hasn't really happened before. And so what I prepared for you, and a lot of information, is you have a memorandum, which is basically the same memorandum we submitted to Jay and to Town Council. And it discusses credit land, discusses the rules, the laws, the regulations, and the guidance for credit land. I also gave you a draft amended credit land restriction and a draft amended facility land restriction. The facility land is the new gas station, the new Seasons Corner Market. That's the facility land. And so what we are asking you for permission to do, there's a lot of legal hoops here, but the upshot of it all is that if you agree, this piece of land, and you have this plan, this piece of land on West Yarmouth, on Great Western Road,
Can you
which,
interrupt for 1 second? You mentioned a number of things. In my packet, don't have any of those.
So
I have a cover letter.
I sent electronically, when I emailed to the board and said, because this pack is this big, about a week ago, you received this electronically to review.
Yes.
Did you,
I didn't see it, okay,
Larry? Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Because it was so significant in the paperwork that it was sent to you electronically. Mary, did you get that?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Jay, do you have the plan in there? Could you pull out the plan, maybe we can give it to Hillard? A lot of, the legal documents are, a lot of it's just legalese, but the plan kind of brings home what we're asking.
I think he's passed it.
It was near the, yeah, oh, there it is, yeah.
I can share.
Okay. So, yeah, and I'll. Do you need do you have a copy?
Oh, I looked
You
at
looked
it,
at it? Okay, great. So this piece of land on Great Western Road, and you can see it highlighted there, what Colbia would like to do is, this piece of land is much too big. It's much more than they need. They only need to protect 26,000 square feet of land under their nitrogen aggregation plan. So what they're proposing to do is to restrict at this time a strip of land up the side, which is 26,000 square feet. That would leave the remainder of the property to hopefully be able to be used by others to so restrict for credit land in the nitrogen zone in the future. This land meets all of the qualifications to be credit land. This is what we worked on with town council, and the memorandum that I submitted lists it, the 310 CMR 15216 lists 9 or 10 criteria that you have to meet, and this is going to meet all of those. It's going to be permanently protected as nitrogen credit land. So right now, for example, this land on Great Western Road, it's surrounded by town land. If the town someday wanted to do something with that land, they could. With this piece that Colbia owns, or this piece of it to start, you couldn't use that piece. You know, that land would be permanently protected and restricted from anything that would introduce nitrogen into the ground. So any, you know, whether it was a horse, you know, the biological functions, or a bathroom, you know, any kind of a septic system. The reason for doing this, the reason for, as we alluded to this several years ago, is that right now, the old Shell station next to Dunkin' Donuts, it's right smack dab in the middle of the commercial zone, and we all think it might be the best, this is better land to protect because it's actually surrounded by open space as well, and this would allow the old gas station site to be used for, it would just be a store or an office or something. It couldn't be anything that would introduce, or hazardous material. There'd be a septic system, so it would introduce some nitrogen, right? But you couldn't have anything hazardous, so no more gas stations, no more automobile repair, things like that. The documents that we entered into with you a few years ago, I think it's paragraph 10, expressly provide that we can do exactly what we're seeking to do with your permission. You have to agree to enter into that. You can approve an amendment of the restriction document, and those are the drafts I've given you. That's what we're asking you to vote on tonight is, and we'd sign them later, but we're asking you to vote to agree to amend, to do two things. It's a vote to release the current credit land from the restriction, and in place of that, to restrict the new land. And that's what the documents I prepared do. It's what they would accomplish if signed and recorded. And that's what we're asking your permission to do. And again, I gave a lot of materials, and we did go over with town council. So if you have questions, happy to try and answer them, and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Board members? I don't know enough, so I'm not going to be able to be of any value here tonight for this, so.
I don't have any questions. The applicants did say, when they first came before us, that they would be looking for other land as a possibility for the restrictions, so.
And just so the board is aware, and we did, Attorney Singer and the Colbia Enterprise team did come in. We've met with the building commissioner. We had a question. We needed, with certainty, to know that the land that's being proposed met the qualification, the zoning, and all the requirements, building and otherwise, as credit land. And council responded in the affirmative that, in fact, it does meet credit land. So it's an offset. but it does have that. And I believe that just as a point of interest, I think today, is there some beautification that has started on that property? I just over the, I don't know if it was the weekend or I saw it today, some soils coming in and the beautification, the buffer beautification.
Buffer we discussed with your board and with the ZBA, yes.
Yeah, because that work has started. Right.
Yep. Yeah, the hard pack was stripped over the weekend and removed around, and loam, I think it's loam, went down and was shaped today.
Shaped today into the beds. That'll get planted.
Great.
Ultimately, if there's a use for that building, for some reason, I always say like a bridal shop or something.
there you go.
I never know what it's gonna be. It won't be a gas station, and that's my world. It'll continue to be landscaped and maintained, but at least it would be a useful piece in the middle of the commercial zone rather than a vacant lot.
And it would have to go through all the town permits, whatever was needed for site plan review, and yes, so that's.
Is Colbia going to maintain ownership of that land?
Until we sell it. I mean, the game plan would be sell it to somebody who could put it to a use that fits all the guidelines, all the restrictions that are going to remain in place. Like I said, it couldn't be an automobile shop or a gasoline station. There's a number of uses that it wouldn't qualify for any longer, but there's a lot it could be. But all the beautification, if you will, the buffer zone, the requirements that were in place when we went through permitting will all take place over the next few weeks, really. There's really not much left to do.
Larry, any comments?
No, I
anything?
think
Eric,
I'm fine with it.
Mary, anything else?
Yep, fine with it.
So we're voting on this tonight, so someone would like to make a motion?
I move that we request the approval of the amendment to the 2022 nitrogen aggregation plan involving 446 and 473 Station Avenue, South Yarmouth, that we release the current land from restrictions and establish the new described land as the restrictions.
Yeah, I second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I'm glad Mary made the motion.
Yeah. I left it up to her.
There you go.
Any comment on that, Mary?
No, I hope I did it okay.
You did a fantastic job.
As usual, yes.
Okay, good.
So that's the only discussion we have. So I'm just going to abstain from the vote and I'm not prepared to vote on it. I just didn't see the material. So all in favor of passing on this?
Aye.
It's 2,
Aye.
Mary, it's 3, unanimous, all 3 votes. Go to work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will submit to Jay, we'll submit signed copies from Colbia that would then go to the board. Doesn't have to be at a meeting, but they can then sign them. And then we will record them at the registry.
That'd be helpful. Great, appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Hope you-
Okay.
You guys make that meeting?
Right now.
Okay.
Okay, number 4 here is the poultry permit continued, and this is for over 70 Witchwood Road. Barry, what are we doing tonight on this?
So last meeting, we only had 2 of the 3 abutters signed a letter saying that it was okay. Larry made the suggestion that he knew the third party and he was going to go talk to her. So Larry, if you want to kind of let us know how that conversation went.
Yeah, sure. It was just really a misunderstanding. I think actually the rats were more of a problem with the particular neighbor that balked at signing the letter. She was actually had some problems with rats in her property. She's very environmentally conscious. Actually, I learned something at that meeting with her, that she actually has these rat traps that are bait traps that sterilize the rats. They don't kill them. They're not poisonous. They actually sterilize the rats.
So they're doing vasectomies in the cage or what?
I think it's more to do
Ligation?
with,
Oh, my God.
birth control, feminine birth control, I think.
So reversible.
Reversible, right,
Okay.
exactly. So I thought that was pretty
That's
novel.
partially for you. We have our medical student here tonight, so.
Something learned that it was pretty novel, and I think this is a fairly new endeavor in a lot of wildlife, where there's population issues. I don't know, deer, raccoons, other wildlife in suburban settings, that they're using these progestins to, for birth control. As deterrents to population
It's
density.
gonna follow into our next chapter, our next thing, but that's how the mosquitoes, they spray the mosquitoes and for the males,
Right.
so
Right.
they neutralize them, so
Sure.
it's,
So she was fine with signing the letter once I explained. First I went and looked at the setup. It's a really nice family. It's a family, she has a couple of boys or a couple of children, and the family has, I think there are only 6 chickens or, and they're a real part of the family. They're more pets than, and the facility was very well kept. I certainly had no issues with it. And then from there, I went, talked to the neighbor, and she was fine with signing the letter, and, I think we should just grant the permit. It was sort of a nice morning. Everybody seemed happy.
Anyone? We can turn this into a motion, I think, Larry.
Yeah, please.
Let's assume
Larry?
Yeah, so I make a motion that we approve this poultry permit for Dania Abreu on Witchwood Road. I think that she complies with all the regulations that we've asked.
Anyone who-
Second.
That's good. And I assume there's no further discussion. Okay, let's vote. All in favor? Granting it?
Aye.
Okay.
Just to finish up, oh, go ahead, Mary.
I just have one question of Larry. Larry, I think that's great that we're getting away from rodenticides, because that's a real
Yes,
problem. for-
Absolutely, especially these second
Rap-
generation
Right.
rodenticides.
So does it, if a raptor, a hawk were to eat an animal that had the hormone in them, would that affect the bird?
I would think so. I mean, it's a progestin, I believe. I think it would work the same way to suppress fertility.
What's the half-life, though, on it, in other
I
words?
don't know. I don't know. I didn't really look into it. I could. I certainly could find that out for you, because it's.
Out of interest, you can,
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I should have anyway. I just was delighted to hear that,
Yeah.
number one, she would sign off. Number two, she
Right.
wasn't even killing rats in the process.
Right.
So,
thanks for going over, Larry.
yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. She'd been a client for a long, long time, very nice lady. And she had, as Barry had expressed, she'd had a ton of bird feeders, and I think that's where the rats were coming.
And if the board recalls, at the last meeting, an abutter, Mr. Quirk, did come forward and wanted, and advocated for that. And it was just being held, I think somewhat, there was some frustration there. I am going to reach back to let him know that the board has, in fact, moved forward with that. So it was just a hold, for more information, and that's,
They're a delightful family as well. The kind of family I had in mind when I talked about the poultry permitting to begin with. It's really a nice little family endeavor. A nice little project going, and they've got, I'm sure it supplies enough eggs for the whole family.
well,
They're doing a great job with it.
we'll make the applicant aware of the board's decision, but I also want to make sure the abutter, Mr. Quirk, is made available, that is informed that the board has moved forward in the affirmative with that.
Yeah, the coop was very unobtrusive as well. You hardly even knew it was there until you went out to look at it.
Just submit your bill for time, okay?
No, I won't. It was just gratifying to
Nice that you did that.
see that. I was happy to do it.
Yeah.
That was nice you did that.
Story ends in a nice way.
Right.
Doesn't always, that's great. Okay, number 5 here, it's an update on Triple E and the West Nile virus. Barry, is that you?
Well, I can take that. You have some information in front of you. So the board understands, here we are in September, but with the warm weather and it's still humid out, The risk to triple E and West Nile virus is still very real, and it will be, so that those listening at home, as the board knows, until there's a first hard frost, and we're still in some very warm weather. So the risk continues. The State Department of Public Health announced on Friday, they have their now 11th case of West Nile virus, human West Nile virus, and the risk to triple E is now being, in certain areas, conquered. Moderate risks, some are high risks. Aerial spraying and ground spraying is starting. I think aerial spraying is up in Plymouth County. Ground spraying is happening in Worcester. And it's just so that the board is made aware, and more so to the community that's listening, precautions still need to be taken, right? There's still the risk. The dawn and dusk, long sleeves, repellent, but making sure that personal precautions are being made, and also on your property, standing water and things of that nature, so that the risk is still very much real. The state is concerned. This is probably one of the highest, and Mr. Hillard, you have mentioned this, that, although it's rare, it's severe, right? And triple E especially, what I'm talking about as far as the severity of that, I think it's a third. There's individuals die, mortality, right?
Yeah.
So that although it's very rare, the risk, it needs to have individuals' attention, and people are out walking as we see the sun setting earlier, making sure that precautions are being taken care of. So the state, and this is all up on our website. If you go to our town website, the dashboard is there, and you'll be able to see what the sampling that's going on, and the state is being very aggressive in communicating, and we're following their protocols.
And of course, it's not rare if you're the one that gets it.
That's right.
100% then, that if you,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, that's right. It's simple surgery until it's on you, right? Exactly, yeah.
Very much.
Profound.
It's your math skills, I think it's what it's about. Yeah, that pre-vet class that you took to get it to school, I mean, it shows, it's nice. Okay. Number 6 here, this is acceptance of the meeting minutes from August 19th, 2024. If anyone has any edits, or they're written really well, it was great. I don't have anything to add. Does anyone? No.
I think you would postpone the accepting of them to amend it for a comment I had made. And I don't know if it made it in there, but it was kind of a mouthful, so I wrote it on here. I don't know if you want it to, you had wanted it to make it into the minutes, and I don't think it had.
Bo said that was a different meeting.
Was that a different meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear you. That was the previous meeting. Okay, so that's taken care of.
You're happy?
Happy.
Okay, good. So happy someone will make a motion.
I move we adjourn.
No, accept the minutes.
I gotcha.
Yeah, almost.
No, I move we accept the meeting minutes from August 19th, 2024.
Wow, you didn't even marry on that one. That's great. Come on, second, somebody.
I second it.
Second.
Okay, everybody, okay.
Okay.
All right, all in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right, that's done. Good. New and old business. Larry, do you have any new or old business?
Good.
Eric, do you have any new or old business?
No.
Mary, do you have any new or old business?
Yes, I'm still waiting to hear about the overdose deaths in Yarmouth. I wondered if Jay had a chance to get those numbers for us.
I have reached out, I don't have them, to the YSAC group, and I'm just waiting for that, Mary. It's not lost on me. And the other one that you asked about was vaccination, school immunizations, and I don't have that yet.
Right.
But I
think that.
but I haven't-
But I'm interested
Okay,
also.
but I haven't forgot. Those are 2 requests from the last meeting. I just don't have them.
Not getting it. I'm happy to try. I mean, there's got to be a pediatrician in charge of the health.
School,
DUI.
it's the nurse. I'm sure they're in the process of it now, but I can get that. I know typically the superintendent, and when I've talked to him, they're compliance rate is somewhere around 91%. But to give you a hard, fast number, I will get that.
It would be interesting also, which vaccinations perhaps that people are not getting. So it'd be nice, I know in the past they've given us a breakdown, percentage-wise, for the
Right.
different vaccinations.
I have that.
Great,
Okay.
okay. And the only thing that Mary, yes, what's
Yeah,
up?
the head school nurse has done that. I have one other comment. I don't know if I'm getting maybe the originals, but we really do, I don't think we need to have all of our paper documents printed in color. I think you can save some money and not have them all in color for us anyway. That's my opinion.
Can I piggyback that with double-sided?
Yeah, that'd be great too.
Sure. It'd be easier to manage all this
we do
paperwork,
that?
too.
This is-
Right,
That'd be
right.
great.
Finally, we're making some progress in this meeting. Anything else?
To that point is why I didn't give the Colbia report. I appreciate that. Thank you for the suggestion, and we can certainly follow that.
Mary, do you want to start? We could have just meetings quarterly, and that may save something also.
That was great, though, Jay. I think that worked out.
What's that now?
Having to print out that
Yeah.
whole thing would have been,
Too much.
plus it was all legal jargonese. I started to doze off as I started to read it.
Thank you.
Over my head.
Well, keep it for other nights you have trouble falling asleep.
Okay. The only thing I had was just about, I had brought up the point of, heat advisories to talk a little bit about. What I meant really was just that, should we be sending out text messages or phone calls for heat-related issues after this summer? It's something to certainly think about. It just maybe telling people the dates when this is happening, the temperatures, the rest of the script for this could be the same. Basically what precautionary measures someone should take, really simple, and what are some of the signs that you may, for heat-related illness, why maybe you should seek some medical assistance, but keeping it really short. A lot easier, I think, Bruce and I wrote scripts for, COVID every week to, this is not going to be that. It's really just the dates of when we expect the, temperatures to go up, and maybe some actual temperatures. That's about it. So I just wanted to get people's feelings about it, thoughts about it.
On top of that, maybe we can do one for the cold weather coming up too, like if we,
So what do you have in mind, Hill, as far as
It'll be just a written thing that'll be used, that's all.
on a weekly basis? or-
No, if there's temperatures going to 98, the residents should know that they're in danger.
How
Some
would
of the
we
things they could do.
disseminate that information?
Either text messages,
Okay.
or phone messages, and you sign up online for this.
Sure.
And the
Can
fact
you
that,
add pets to that, too? 'Cause I see
There would be.
these people walking these, or running these dogs in this hot weather, the hot pavement at noontime, and it just blows me away.
That would be part of that. Typically, it's animals being left in cars as they run into the supermarket. That becomes a 20-minute,
On a hot
you know,
pavement, it
no,
just
yeah,
bothers me.
yeah.
To see these dogs out there with these heavy coats trying to walk with these people that are barely clad, many clothes on it at all, and these poor dogs are just trying to keep up. I don't know, maybe beyond the scope of what you're,
no, we're talking about,
No, I don't think so.
I think it's a great point.
So heat advisory, we could do that. I mean, typically, the Cape and other parts of the state, they do cooling centers and they do heating centers, but I haven't seen that here, but, the senior center and the libraries are, cooling and heating, warming centers, but we've kind of passed the season on the heat, that piece, I would guess, but we could have we could have something in place that the board can review. Yeah.
Really brief, and I'm sure you find it from another town somewhere in the country who's doing this, and just,
I did it for years in Worcester, sure.
okay.
Yeah.
Fine. It's interesting, I was working in the city, in Manhattan. One of the issues we had was hypothermia. People had very low temperatures during these certain really hot summers, and that was because you see a lot of elderly people would not be going out, and they would be turning their air conditioners way up. and they would present in the ER with very low temperatures in the summer when it was 98 degrees out. Enough of that. Anyway, just some trivia.
Yeah.
Heat-related trivia. Any
As
other?
long, yes, sorry, Hillary. I just wanted to comment that Washington Post had a very interesting article this past week on, they used Houston, Texas as the example, but it talked about heat and how damaging it can be across many fronts, particularly to the utilities, to the, the power systems and all. And one of the comments that was made is that cooling centers, going in them for a couple of hours is really not enough in terms of the damages that heat can do to your body. But I think it's very timely that you brought that up, Hillary, because it was a very interesting article, and it basically said no city is really prepared for what this can do. So we could start.
It's interesting. I read a article last night. It was really dealing with some of the effects of climate change, of temperatures getting hotter and hotter, and that it's affecting more than just the icebergs. It's affecting us in everyday ways. For instance, they're finding that the murder rate is up when the temperatures are up, assaults are up. There are more people showing up in ERs who have fallen off ladders when it's hot out. In areas where there's not enough air conditioning, school kids aren't performing as well. So things are changing.
Yep.
Barry, Jay, new, old?
Just to let the board to be aware that on a daily basis, we're giving out between 25, probably, and 30 COVID kits here at upstairs in the main hall. We've just ordered, is it 400 or 500?
No,
4 cases.
4 cases. Each case has 450 in them.
Yep, so they're going through. We hope to have we have the flu clinic that at the end of October. We hope we have an inventory left for that, but we're going to get them out. People will come. They're at our counter. They're upstairs. They're at the senior center. We've delivered them in a couple different locations, and the uptick now people are asking for them. So just so the board is aware and the community is aware that they are available. We have them. We've ordered some more. We hope to have them also. We put them out at voting, right? I've made deliveries at a couple of the different voting locations, Kingsway and a couple of the other voting locations. So the board understands that the community has a concern because we fill that desk up at the front desk daily with probably between 25 and 30 COVID kits. So there is some concern and anxiety of that. I don't think the severity that we're seeing, and certainly the protocols, CDC has changed the protocols on things, but it's on people's mind and they're concerned about COVID. So
It's too bad the expiration dates are so short on those, because they just seem to, add to the landfill. I mean, there's just, most of them we just don't even use. It's a shame.
I know, that's true.
They can't figure out if they can't extend that expiration date on those.
And with that becomes reliability of then the individuals start thinking, well, it's a negative or it was a positive, but it may be a false positive, and but that's real. We've struggled with that. They put a QR code to extend that. That's been difficult to try to message. People don't understand. They immediately look at the back. It expires in July, and here we are. It's into end of August. Well, no, they've extended that 3 more months. And to get that information, people immediately do. We do it with medication all the time. We do it with our food products. You immediately turn it over and say, what's the expiration date? Well, they may not read that QR code that said the state has extended that 3 more months. That's been a challenge. But the important piece, we're getting this out, and information, and we're getting the kits out. They don't need to be here in our office. They're in people's homes, and that's what's happening on a daily basis.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then the other part would be, I think I heard earlier, it's October 7th is going to be the board meeting next.
Right.
Okay.
Just a random neuron here. It's been hot and dry, and we're getting into lawn renovation season where people are redoing a lot of their lawns. just for people to consider organic fertilizing options. I think a lot of over-application takes place, and obviously that's why we have some issues with our water quality in ponds, so just a plug for the organic fertilizers. There's a lot of good products out there that are relatively inexpensive.
If you could get us a list of that, we'd be more than happy to put it on our
Sure.
website.
Sure. I think a lot of the, not to name any names with the four-step program that we're all familiar with, but I think a lot of over-application happens when people just, I bought the whole bag, I'm gonna use the whole bag. 15,000 square feet, that's really an over-application, even at their recommended rate. It's an over-application if you follow all the steps, so. I can get you some university publications with some pretty easy math on them about proper application rate. It's really only about 1 to 2 pounds of actual nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per year. It's pretty low. So, Roger Cook from This Old House, I don't know if anyone watches This Old House, he just passed recently, but one of his sayings was, feed weekly. He was talking about house plants, but the same concept applies. A nice low dose more frequently is probably a lot more usable than these heavy applications.
Once a year.
Once or twice.
Because
or
most
three
of these
times a
just
year.
go right into, they're just leached right out.
They're leached right out, or they're going down the storm drain at the end of the road, after a lot of people, they think, oh, it's gonna rain tonight, I better apply, and then there it goes.
Yeah.
So it's not, you're really they're wasting money, unfortunately, and causing some pretty serious problems.
Eric, you want to do it again?
Sure. I move we adjourn.
Second?
Thank you. All in favor of adjourning, raise your hand, say aye. And that's
Aye.
everyone.